Hey, welcome back to another video. So in this one, I wanted to talk about this topic, and I'm actually excited to talk about this. If it was a year ago, year and a half ago, I would be like, oh, I have no idea what to talk about. But I want to basically talk about the point of how can we practically create a world that is best for all.
I mean, like, if I could do it, honestly, anyone else can do it as well. This is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Basically explain what does that mean and what do I see. And as I'm doing more of my process of using specific tools, getting support from the group that we're part of, and it's like I can see more and more and more. The more I release my limitations, it's like I see what is actually possible. And I don't know how long this video is gonna be, but I'll make it worth it. But basically, I want to start by asking you, like, can you even think of what a world that everyone has their basic needs met? You don't have to wake up with the fear of like, oh, how am I gonna pay my rent this week? How am I gonna find food for my family? Or just like any thoughts of like fear of survival, right? Imagine what that world actually would look or feel like. And I remember for me, like 2 years ago when that first point came up, for me, I was like, but how is that possible? If everyone had what they need, then we would all be like lazy, like not have anything to do, because like we have everything we want. What's the point of actually doing anything? And that was like my initial point of where I came from. And so for me, because I grew up in Iran, I grew up in a place where I didn't have everything taken care for or taken care of. And it's like we always had to find ways to get like the basic needs even, right? And like we here and there, like very rarely had the money to like go on vacations, things like that. I'm not saying we were like starving or anything, but it wasn't like we had a luxury lifestyle or anything like that, And especially coming here and getting into the self-development world and all of that, it's like people make it seem like if you don't have anything to go for, or if you don't have a purpose of what am I gonna go for to achieve, then you're not gonna do anything, which is 100% true. But when it comes to the terms of like when we say having all of your basic needs met, people think we're saying that, oh, then you have nothing to go for, because everyone, what they're doing is basically to get their basic needs. So if all of that is met, what are we gonna do after? And that was like where I was in my headspace. And like many people that I talk to is like the same place. And that's why they can resonate with me, because I grew up like just like the average person. Like I was not programmed or meant to actually be successful, And that's like a whole other story. If you want to find more about it, I've made video with Mitchell on my channel that's like how technotutor helped us turn us into real men, something like that, where we go into more of my background, or some other videos. But basically, for me, where I actually am now, and where I don't actually have to think about my basic needs, and like I'm at a point where I'm making good money through helping people. So even my job, the way I make money, is like I don't have to be like depressed and be like, fuck, I have to go to work just to make some money. It's like, no, I make my money through actually helping a lot of people, and also helping them make money through giving as they want to receive, right? Like, and that's one of the principles we live by. But basically, now that I have my basic needs of like, I don't have to worry about where my food is going to come from, or who's going to pay my rent, because now I'm living by myself. And one fear that I always had of like, what if I am not able to afford my rent? Because all of my family, like, they're doing 9-to-5 job. Like very few of them, like maybe 2-3, have their own business, but it's still they have a 9-to-5 on the side. So it's like that mindset of like, oh, if I have a 9-to-5, how am I gonna afford all this stuff? But thankfully, the way that I was introduced to some tools and support, I got to a point where I built a business that it's like taking care of me, and I can take care of other people now. And which is interesting because now I finally got to a point where I can say I'm financially stable and I'm not struggling or like not having my basic needs met. And now it's this interesting phenomenon because now I am at a point where I have basically everything I need. Like if it's just self-interest point, like I don't really need much else. The only reason I'm growing more every single day is so I can help other people. That's the main reason I'm getting this stuff, is not to show it off. Like I don't show off like my car or any of that stuff. I got it because everyone before, when I wanted to support people, they were like, oh Mahyar, but you don't have the things I want. So I was like, okay, if I have to get those things for you to listen and actually start growing, then fine, I'll do it. And so I ended up getting the things, and now more people are listening and actually seeing the results, right? But I want to share my story of how I went from basically struggling, not having a purpose, like, and if you don't have a purpose, like I would not even want to get out of my bed. Like I was watching YouTube videos, Netflix every day, very lazy, very procrastinating. Like I did not want to do anything at all, right? I didn't even want to go to a job, let alone having my business. Like for me, that was like too much. But I want to share my process of like what were the 5 key points that I started looking at and actually understanding, and it was what was caused me to have what I have today and be able to give that back. But back to the point of like, before I was like, oh, but if you have all the basic needs, then it's like, what do we do? Like, you know, it's like we come to a point where it's like we feel like, oh, now I don't have anything to strive for, which is interesting because it's actually the opposite of, well, not the opposite in the sense that now that I have everything I want, I'm actually more motivated to support a lot of people, and I have the resources to be able to like drive to someone to meet one-on-one and hang out with them. Like before, I would be like, oh, like I don't have the money to spend on gas, and like I didn't even want to drive anywhere, and so I was always like isolated and didn't have any friends. But now, through actually getting my basic needs met, having my basic needs met, I'm like more motivated to actually support more people and to give back more. Like now I can actually give as I would have liked to receive when I was walking my process, or if I was younger, right? And I can actually give from the starting point of not jealousy or not spiteful. Because before, if I wanted to give, I would be like, oh, but if I give, what if that person starts competing with me? Or like, what if they do this? What if they stab me in the back? What if that? What if that? But now it's like, no, we have a community that we're building, and we have the tools that by people using it, they actually develop real principles where we actually trust each other. We are actually can be honest with each other, right? So one important key that I had to basically was a very key component in my ability to have the emotional stability and the financial stability that I have and be able to give back and help was the point of education, right? Because before, no one educated me to like understand basically how am I gonna, I don't know, like how am I gonna make money? How am I gonna have relationships? How am I gonna have friendships? How am I gonna have a good health? Like I didn't have education for any of that stuff. So, and because I wasn't educated in like different ways I can make money, different ways I can impact other people, different ways that, oh, there's so much opportunity in this world, but I didn't know any of those opportunity, which is like lack of education. So when I say education, all I really mean is like I started increasing my vocabulary, right? And so I'll give you a good example of what I mean by vocabulary. So I had a mentor that I heard this story from another person, which was on the point of depth of vision, right? So it's this concept that's called, I'll write it right here, depth of vision. And also, if you get anything out of the video, like subscribe and share it with your friends because more people can get more out of this. But so there's this concept of depth of vision, which the story that I heard from this person was like, his mentor, so this guy that was telling the story, his mentor basically took a like a tray of cigar or something like that, and was like, I want you to imagine that this is an acorn, right? And he was like, with depth of vision, what do you see in this acorn? Like, where do you see this? Like, he just said, with depth of vision, what do you see here? And so the person was like, well, if I say food for squirrel, like, I flunked the test, right? Like, that's not that much. Obviously, the mentor doesn't want me to answer it that way. So he was like, oh, I don't see food for squirrel. What I see is actually a tree, right? Because the acorn, if you plant it, water it, it'll turn into a tree down the line, right? And the mentor was like, okay, I'm impressed. Like, you actually like have some depth of vision, right? And then the mentor was like, what I see is not a tree, but a forest, right? Because from that one tree, the mentor had the vocabulary that a tree then has more acorn, and then you can plant those acorns, or even like when it's windy or something, the acorn falls in the ground and then another tree comes up, right? Or if you plant it, and eventually down, like years and years down the line, then you have a forest, right? And then the person was like, oh, now it makes sense. Okay, what I see is not a forest. What I see is a city, right? Because you could take those trees, cut it down, make houses, and do all sorts of stuff, right? And so, but you can see, if you don't have the vocabulary, that like in building a house, obviously there's concrete, all that stuff, foundation, footing, all that stuff. But also most of the houses in America, or at least in Texas that I've seen, is like they legit build it with just wood, right? In Iran, where I grew up, it was like bricks and like cement and all that stuff. But here they literally just build it with wood. So if you have that vocabulary, then you could see down that line. So you see how with just knowing more words and actually understanding them, because it's not like you take a dictionary, read a word, read a definition, that's it. It's like, no, taking a word, understanding what it means, what are the different definitions, because every word has multiple definitions, but also what does it look like in the real world. That's real education, is every word that you can spell, process of what it means, and actually comprehend and actually see what it looks like in this real physical world, right? So I'm giving you this story because when I started building my vocabulary using specific tools, and if you want to learn more about those, reach out one-on-one. I have links to where you can reach out to me in the description. But as I started increasing my vocabulary of like more and more of what is possible, different, like I started learning about e-commerce, started learning about YouTube, started learning about direct sales, and like all these different things in the business side, but also starting to understand relationship. What does it take to build a relationship? Like, what is trust? What is honesty mean? And where does it even begin, right? So it's like, you see how the word relationship, an effective relationship, has even more words, and those words have more words. Because like, what does trust mean? What does honesty mean, right? And even like trust, I learned a cool definition that trust is basically predictability is the foundation of trust. Anything that you can predict, you can trust it, right? Meaning, if let's say you give money to someone and they give it back, and then you do that 10 times, and each time they keep giving you the money back that they borrow, then you trust that person, because you're like, that's predictable. Every time I give them something, they always return it, right? Or like, even like a store like McDonald's is open all day, every day. Doesn't matter if it's rainy, snowy, whatever. It's like, you know, it's open. So you know that if I drive there, they'll be open, right? So through building my vocabulary, I started actually increasing my level of education and my understanding of more and more of this reality, and what does money mean, all that stuff. And what that led to was basically purpose, right? I actually started finding what is my real purpose, because now, as I had, like, imagine in the story, if the person didn't have the vocabulary of like how a forest is made, then they would never even see past a tree. Or even if they didn't know that you could plant an acorn and it will turn into a tree, then that's all you could see. You could not see any of this, right? And so even with city, you could even take it further down and you could keep going. The more you have the vocabulary, the more understanding you have. So for me, just by increasing my vocabulary and even understanding each word, I started seeing what was possible, and all of a sudden I understood, oh, what am I here to do, right? And for me, that's to actually, like, the purpose of humans is like to give, right? The big purpose. Now, I'm not talking about now what is your role in giving, because some people are good at, I don't know, being musicians. Some people are good at building business. Some people are good politicians, whatever. Your role, I'm not talking about the role. I'm talking about as a whole, our purpose is to give. Because think about it, like, look at the trees. If you're outside or if you can see a tree, look at a tree and ask yourself, what is the purpose of a tree? And if you're honest, it's like the purpose of a tree is, let's say, to give oxygen, to give shade, to give fruit, if it's a fruit tree, like, so it has all these purposes. That's like to give all these things. Ask yourself, what is purpose of like soil, right? And like the purpose of the soil, one of the major one is to give nutrients to the seed so that the seed can grow, right? What's the purpose of the sun, right? Is to give heat, is to basically provide heat, right? Imagine if the sun woke up one day and was like, you know what? I don't like Earth today. I don't feel like giving energy or heat to Earth. It's like all of us would die. That's why if you really want to take your life to the next level, you cannot just go based on feelings, because feelings always change, right? And so when my life started changing, when I actually had a real purpose, that broke down to having certain principles, right? Which allowed me to now move myself daily, right? Because before I was lazy, procrastination, lack of purpose, depression. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But then when I had purpose, that led me to have certain principles so that regardless of how I feel, like I didn't feel like making this video before, but I just hit record and I just started talking. And then the feeling of like, oh, I don't want to make a video, I don't know what to say, just disappears, just goes away. So we also have key principles that we live by, right? And I'll put a link of that in the description as well. But then now what the purpose led to, right, was, oh, where am I? Okay. I'm like getting used to making the video. So what the purpose led to, let me erase this real quick. So, but you see how the more I started becoming educated, I started having a sense of purpose. And so now what the purpose led to was, was to build communities, right? Was to build a community, because now I was like, oh, now I'm clear on what I want to do, and that led to making more money. So I was like, now I just need to build a community of people, which we call Self-Perfected Clubhouse, which if you're not part of the Self-Perfected group, look it up on Facebook, Self-Perfected, and we have clubhouses all over the world, all over US, Canada, Australia, Europe, virtually everywhere, even in Asia at this point, right? And so by building the communities specifically locally, but also globally, but more important locally, because being physically with people, that has an effect that you cannot get just through a screen, through Zoom, right? And so through building community, what that actually provided was, was basically point of relationships, right? Relationships. And by relationships, I mean not just romantic relationship, but relationship like real friendships with people who actually care about creating a world that is best for everyone. And now you see what that means is just, if everyone just did what I did, which I came from a third world country, like if I could do it, like you can definitely do it. all you have to do is just follow what I did. And you get all the stuff that you actually want. So, and now for me, the next point is actually finding a partner, because I had a lot of programmings against being in a relationship and women and all of that stuff from where I grew up. Because in Iran, where I grew up, like in school, it was like the school I went to, it was like all guys, and there was another school that was like all girls, and the schools were like an hour apart, so you couldn't just walk to the other school. And so I never learned like really how to talk to women, you know what I mean? And I had cousins who were female, but like that's different than just finding a woman that you don't know and just start talking to them, you know? And so when I came here, I had to learn that through going to school, but also using the tools to bring up those limitations of like why I don't want to get into a relationship, and start releasing more and more and more of those limitations. And now I'm actually seeing that, oh, I'm now genuinely open into in the idea of like actually being in a relationship, and not just a relationship where, let's say, I see a girl, we kiss, and it's like all these butterflies going on. But it's like, no, it's more than that. I want to actually create a relationship where we have principles and agreements, right? I wrote down principles, because if you don't have principles in a relationship of like, let's say, because there's going to be times where we're going to challenge each other or question something where, let's say, the other person may react, right? But also if you're using the right tools that we're using, you become way more emotionally stable, so you can have open conversations and talk with your partner. But if, let's say, the person's not using the tool and you bring up, like, let's say if you're in a partnership right now, a relationship, it's like, I know in the back of your head, like, especially if you're not part of what we're doing and developing these principles, like, there is that part of you where you're like, oh, but if I challenge my partner, what if he or she reacts and like they just leave me? Because it doesn't feel good to challenge people. It doesn't feel good to confront or be confronted. So it's like you have that fear of lack and fear of loss, right? It's more likely fear of loss, not fear of lack. So your real starting point in creating relationships is actually fear of loss. That's why I don't even know the ratio, but like majority, like 50-80% like plus people who basically get into a relationship or get married end up in divorce, right? Even people who don't marry, like they break up all the time and go through multiple relationships. And it's like, if up front you tell the partner of like, hey, I want to be with you based on these agreements of like, do you agree that if we see that the other person is doing something that is not best for them or for us or for even other people, because what you do in your relationship affects other people outside, and with the understanding that you may react, right? So it's like, if you bring that up beforehand, if the person doesn't like it, then they can be like, no, I don't agree to it. And it's like, okay, cool, thanks for letting me know. Like, now I can find someone else who actually wants it, and I'm not gonna waste 2 years of my life where after 2 years I challenge a person, they react and they just leave me. And it's like, what about those 2 years where most people are like, oh, maybe relationship is not for me, I don't want to get into it, it's a waste of time, all this stuff. But you see how if you had the education and had the real purpose of like, why am I even getting into this relationship? What are we even creating? Which comes from individuals having a purpose. Because if you don't have a purpose, then how can you be with someone else and have a purpose, if that makes sense, right? So most people are in relationships without a purpose. Like, it's like they do the same things every day for months and years until they get bored and break up and find someone else. But if you had actual real purpose and real principles, then you will get to a point where you would start helping other people. Building community means also helping other people, right? But also we have the tools and the blueprint of how you can create clubhouses yourself as well, right? But just to clarify, for clubhouses, those are like people who are distributors and are getting more support so they can understand how to practically run it and all that, and have the tools to program themselves to like, because if you don't have the tools and you start a clubhouse, what if in 2 weeks you don't feel like doing it? Then you just stop. But if you have the tools, you could develop real principles and you could move and push yourself, specifically move yourself regardless of how you feel, because now you have a bigger purpose that's moving you, not some feelings or energy. And so through that, then you can develop more relationships that lead to more basically people who you can educate purpose. Like literally what you're going through, you could take other people through it. I'm just taking people through all of this. And because I came from a place where I didn't know how to make money, I didn't know how to have relationships, even friendships, have good health, like literally any of that stuff. But now I do have it. And so now I'm just showing people how to do it. That's why we have hundreds, thousands of people who are using the tools and are part of the communities we are part of and are growing regardless of their background, regardless of if they're in a third, second, first world country, regardless of their race, where they're from, like, doesn't matter. It's like anyone can get results. So now, most importantly, what now that leads to, or the building the community leads to relationship, but also the point of freedom, right? Which is like now you're at a point where you have real principles. Now you're making money through something that actually matters, and you're not just doing it just to make some money. Then you get to a point where you now have financial freedom, you have time freedom, because we show you how to build a business that's very easy. Before, I used to think building business is the scary thing, and like I don't have discipline, I don't have consistency, like how do I find people, how do I sell? Like I hate salespeople, like how am I gonna be a salesperson? I fucking hate salespeople. But then I understood, oh, building a business is where you really day to day just share something that really matters in this world, and you get paid through doing that. So you don't have to get a job that you hate and that the job is creating more problems in the world. Like let's say you do e-commerce, dropshipping, which is like, let's say you sell pillows or like water bottles or something like that to a bunch of people. It's like at some point they're gonna throw that away, and it's gonna like end up in like land, and it's not gonna dissolve, and so you're really hurting the environment. So you're making money is actually aligned with creating a world that's not best and like more problems and everything. But imagine if you made money through actually helping people to go through all this point, then you see how genuinely like fun it is. Like now I actually love building a business. Like me talking to you, this is sort of building a business, because if you're in Houston, you could come to our clubhouse, or if you're wherever in the world, reach out to me and I'll tell you if there's a clubhouse near you. Now we're getting more and more people everywhere. Or you could be the one that goes through this process and creates that clubhouse. Like again, if I did it, like virtually anyone can do it. Like I remember there was a point where I was like sitting on a couch and I was genuinely thinking, like looking at YouTube videos of like people buying their dream house, dream car, getting into a relationship, like all this stuff. And I would get happy for them, but then immediately right after I would become sad, because I was like, that's cool, but I'll never get those things. But like, guess what? Like through going through this process and having certain people help me, I actually am now at a place that it's like, I'm genuinely happy. And I wake up every day knowing that, okay, whose life am I gonna impact today? And it's not like me just inspiring someone, but now we actually have the tools that it's not just inspiring, but actually you take it and you apply it and you see the results for yourself, right? So it's like real results that we're getting here, right? So you see how all of that leads to time freedom, health, time freedom, financial freedom. I was about to say health freedom, but it's like, because think about it, like so many people have so many diseases, but actually through educating properly and having real principles, it's like you become free of all those diseases, right? And then you turn this ease into just ease, where now your body is like in sync with helping other people. Because look, everything around you, the trees, sun, everything is here to give, but human beings are the only ones that you're like, what's your purpose? And it's like they say something that's just like take, consumerism, right? So it's like, how is it everything around us is giving, but we're the only ones that's taking, right? But it's like you see people who give money to homeless people and they feel happy, but it's like, yeah, but we need to create systems, we need to create a world that everyone can actually have what they want, right? And so yeah, basically, like, I just wanted to share this because it's like, it's very simple. And now what this will lead to, having more people educating them and then showing them how to find their purpose, right? Like the bigger purpose, but also their role on how to apply that purpose, and then showing them how they can build communities and relationships, and how all of this literally goes hand in hand together, right? So, and then at some point we're gonna have people who are gonna go into politics and so forth, and so it's all gonna come back and be held by something we call equal money system, right? Where it's like a money system where you don't have to participate in abuse to make money, but you could have your basic needs met, but also have the education to now don't take that and abuse it, but actually be able to create more. And so this is like, I guess, a simple way of how to really create a world that's like really best for all. So yeah, I just wanted to share this. Again, if any of this resonates, if you're like, okay, that's cool, but like, how is that possible for me? Feel free, reach out to me and we'll chat one-on-one. Again, if you want links to where you can reach out to me, just click the description. If you're on YouTube, click the description. If you're on Facebook, go on the YouTube, check it out. Yeah, we could talk, let's connect, and actually let's create a world that's best for everyone. Thanks for watching. Hey, I just wanted to thank you for watching the whole video. And I just wanted to say the whole reason I made the YouTube channel is to actually genuinely help people. Like, the last thing I want is to be another guru out there that's just trying to sell another course or whatever. And for me, I've been fortunate enough to come across the specific tools and support to, you know, get to where I am, to go from literally being born in a third world country to making over 5 figures a day, and plus, and showing other people how to do it. It was not, you know, by accident. And I'm not just looking for anyone to connect with. I'm actually here to I'm looking for people who are actually serious and are here to make a difference. So if that's you, if you're super teachable, reach out to me. I have links down below. It's totally free. We can book a 15-20 minute call. I don't know how long I'll keep those links there. So if you want to connect, if you're that person that wants to take things to the next level and actually have an impact in your life and even in the world, then reach out, let's connect, okay? See ya.